Hello and welcome to Newsmax TV. I'm John Bachman. Joining us right now from Washington, D.C. is Grover Norquist, the founder and president of Americans for Tax Reform. Grover, as always, great to talk with you.
John, good to be with you.
All right, first, let's discuss the debate in Congress on passing a continuing resolution which is needed to make sure the federal government can pay its bills and prevent a government shutdown. I wanted to start with this little nugget first, though. The federal government has set an all-time record now for tax revenues collected through the first 11 months of the fiscal year of 2013, but it's still running a deficit of close to $800 billion during that same period. The government collected more than $2.4 trillion, and that was largely in part to legislation that passed in Congress last year raising taxes. So, Grover, is this a worst-case scenario for you? Your prophecy realized here? And what does this tell you about the fiscal state of our government?
Well, unfortunately, this administration is still spending too much money. Taxes are too high. We need to bring spending down on discretionary spending, the here and now, but also on entitlement spending, welfare, Medicaid. We need to make Medicare self-sustaining. So we have a major problem. This fall, we have to tackle what do we do right now this year with a continuing resolution and, sadly, another debt ceiling increase.
Yeah, and this is, basically this deadline's, holding us all hostage here. The House was set to vote on this to pass the CR earlier this week. That would have bought more time to work on more substantial budget plans. And there are some people in the GOP convinced, though, that this is the right time to pick a fight over the CR and defunding Obamacare. The House leadership had to delay this vote on a spending bill because it didn't have enough support, in part because it did not defund Obamacare to many people's likings. Do you see this spending bill passing the House in any way, shape, or form without specifically defunding Obamacare?
Yeah, look, there are three things at play here. It's like juggling. You've got the continuing resolution. So it says, okay, Congress, you can keep spending, but just at the same level you've been spending. No increases at all going for another 3 months. That's a good thing to do because it keeps the caps on spending and it doesn't allow spending to creep up.
And that was the delay. That was the vote that was delayed, correct?
That's one. That's the continuing resolution put out for a couple months. Two, debt ceiling bill. That's one where Leader Boehner in the House has told the president in the past, you want $1 trillion debt ceiling, you got to cut spending $1 trillion. So now we're going to have an argument on debt ceiling about, you want debt ceiling? What is it that the country gets from you as proof that we're going to actually try and reduce the damage you've done on spending? We got a $2.5 trillion spending cut in 2011, and that's what the caps and sequester are. The most important thing to keep in mind is we have to keep the sequester limits on spending. Be very careful. And some people want us to overreach and get into fisticuffs with the administration or the Senate. The Democrats have the Senate. The Democrats have the White House. Republicans have the House. There are three players here. Only one of them has any interest in limiting spending. Two of them want to break the sequester caps and raise taxes. So while we fight to delay and defund some or all of Obamacare, we need to not fall down and fall backwards and end up losing the sequester. So we could lose this fight. It's 2-1 against us, okay? Senate, White House against the House. We need to remember that as we push forward, let's not lose our footing. Let's not lose the sequester. I think we can make some progress because the president himself has admitted that he needs to delay Obamacare for the unions, for a lot of big businesses, and for the insurance companies. We say, well, why not for everybody? And I think that's a good debate to have.
The polling data shows the law is growing increasingly unpopular, and there is a plan to potentially delay it for everybody. We'll see if that takes shape. And, as we look at this CR vote and we see the delay that was pushed through this week, what does this tell us about Speaker Boehner standing with his caucus? Does he have enough support to keep his eye on the ball and do what you say needs to be done?
Yeah. Getting a continuing resolution, or a CR, which will continue funding the government at present levels, which means at lower than the Democrats want levels. Some people argued that we should insist that attached to the CR, the continuing resolution, we put a defunding of Obamacare. Now, that only delays Obamacare because the defunding only lasts as long as the continuing resolution. So that would delay Obamacare for a couple months, okay? Is it possible that the president would sign a delay? I think it might be possible to sign a delay, not a permanent repeal or permanent defunding, but a delay because he's already delayed bunches of his own law because it doesn't work as presently written. There's some Democrats in the Senate who very understandably fear that in 2014, next year, as Obamacare clicks in, it could be very messy. It could be very unpleasant. A lot of people would find their costs of insurance going up. They're not having the doctor they were promised they were going to have. Their taxes and mandates that people are going to be hit with. A lot of Democrats in the Senate might well prefer to delay that for a year, put it past the next election. So I think that's an option. I'm not sure it's a wise idea to say if we don't get X, we'll close the government down.
Hey, but you know a lot of Republicans are saying exactly that, and it seems like Speaker Boehner right now lacks the support to get a delay passed. It might not be ideal, but it's better than nothing. But Speaker Boehner needs the support of his caucus to do that. Will he get that support eventually?
The Republicans are talking to all the members. I mean, members want to send a signal. We care deeply about how damaging Obamacare is. I agree. We should. We need to have that conversation. But we need to do it without shooting ourselves in the foot. And we need to do it in a way that people focus on the problems and the costs and the mistake that is Obamacare. If you say or put yourself in a position where CBS can say, you want to close the government down in order to make a statement about X, the one thing we know is that everyone will focus on the government shutdown, and you don't get to talk about Obamacare. We'll be talking about a shutdown. So we need to figure out how to come up with a vote. This is what Boehner and the other Republicans are trying to come up with. You got to get 218 votes, which means only 15 Republicans can say, I'm too pure to vote for anything, because if you have more than that, you can't pass a bill. So you got to get all the Republicans, almost all the Republicans together, and say, look, we want to send a message that Obamacare is flawed and we're committed to getting rid of it, delaying it, dismantling it, abolishing it. At the same time, we want to maintain and protect the sequester limited spending. So it's juggling. There are a lot of balls in the air. There's not one ball. If you say, I'm only going to look at one ball, and you're juggling, you drop the other ones. And we can't afford to lose the sequester. We can't afford to have the American people think this is a fight about shutting the government down and lose focus on Obamacare and spending limits. So I think the wise thing to do is what Boehner and Cantor were looking to do, which was to pass a bill that says, here's a continuing resolution for a few months so that we can get ready to fight this on the debt ceiling increase. And at the same time, force the Democrats in the House and the Democrats in the Senate to vote yes or no on defunding Obamacare. Now, chances are the Democrats will vote no. That's something everybody should know in time for next year's election.
Some Republicans say that the real fight worth having is on tax reform. Obamacare, get a delay, do whatever we can, but the real fight needs to be on tax reform and a comprehensive long-term budget that is the only thing that's really going to get the economy back on track. I know it's kind of a long shot, but would holding up the CR or the debt ceiling be more winnable from a political standpoint and from a public relations standpoint if the GOP were to harp on tax reform more?
Well, the Republicans have put together a tax reform package through the House of Representatives, the Ways and Means Committee. Congressman Chairman Dave Camp has put this together. He'll be unveiling it soon. It is possible. It's difficult. Look, the President of the United States wants your taxes to be higher and your spending to be higher. The Republicans want spending to be lower and taxes to be lower. There's not a lot of common ground there. They're not trying to do the same thing. In a compromise, two people are trying to get in the same direction, they can compromise on how to do something. But if they wanted two dramatically different things, it's a little hard to compromise. So as much as I hope we will get fundamental tax reform that dramatically reduces rates and is more pro-growth, Obama, for the last 5 years, has demanded that any fundamental tax reform for individuals and businesses would raise $1 trillion in higher taxes, or $1.4 trillion. The president wants to do tax reform to raise taxes. The Republicans want to do tax reform to reduce taxes. They both use the phrase tax reform, but they mean two very different things by it.
Yeah, I know if this situation in Syria, maybe weakening the president a little bit in Washington, also Obamacare and its unpopularity, making him more vulnerable as well. Maybe now is the right time to push for more tax reform from a Republican standpoint, and maybe the president will be more willing to negotiate on something like that as opposed to the legislation, the healthcare legislation that bears his name.
When we started thinking about how to work the continuing resolution, the debt ceiling, tax reform, delaying or defunding Obamacare a few months ago, nobody knew the president was going to get himself in the situation he did in Syria. He has weakened himself because he's looked weak, he's fumbled, he's given the initiative to Putin and Russia, for crying out loud. The Republicans are unhappy. His own Democratic base is very unhappy. So we have a president significantly weaker today than he was 2 months ago. He's trying to get bailed out on foreign policy as well as domestic policy. Excuse me, my goodness, sorry. Thank you.
You can start over when
Okay.
he was getting bailed out on.
Okay, when the president needs to, the president got bailed out by Putin, but in doing so, he gave Putin control of the agenda. The president's now not leading from behind, but he is behind. He's just sort of trailing after Putin, and he's being led around by his nose. Very humiliating for the president, not good for the United States, particularly not good for the people in Syria. And all of this is going on at a time when the president would have liked to have been strong in negotiating with Republicans on taxes and spending. So I think Republicans can do better on the tax and spending issue because the president is weakened by the lousy economy that he's caused, by the problems in international relations that he's caused through his ineptitude, and now we're trying to fix that. He really doesn't have the standing to turn around and tell anybody what to do.
Grover, I do want to thank you for your time. Pleasure talking with you, and take care.
Good to be with you.
And thank you for watching Newsmax TV.